Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Rino. I'm a clinical social worker and the clinical director at Mightier. I'm going to give you an overview of the program and how it helps kids build emotional regulation skills through play. Mightier is an at-home digital biofeedback program designed for kids 4 to 17, and it is available in 8 languages. So we have been around for quite a while now. I think about 10 years that families have been using Mightier in their own homes. So we have gotten a lot of really great and wonderful clinical feedback from families as to how an intervention like this works when you're just using it in your own home. You're not having to go somewhere, not having to go to therapy sessions or anything like that to receive behavioral health support. We were born out of Boston Children's Hospital and Harvard Medical School, and we have designed an at-home digital program that really is clinically impactful, but also ideally more accessible than some other interventions that are out there. So in general, we know that when you are worried about your child, when your child is struggling emotionally and behaviorally, it can be hard to find an intervention that is reasonable and realistic and actually effective for you. You have to go through the process of getting a diagnosis. If it is recommended that your child is go to outpatient therapy or ABA, like you have to get that service. Oftentimes you have to go to a certain setting to in order to access that service. There's a question of what is or is not covered by your insurance. There's a lot of hurdles and barriers that families face and caregivers face when trying to support their children. Depending on what is or is not covered by insurance, there's always this piece about how much does something cost. And then clinical impact, which, especially when we are talking about emotional regulation, is incredibly important. So Mightier, at the core of it, is helping kids build emotional regulation skills. It does this through biofeedback video games. Kids wear a heart rate monitor as they play, and the games respond to what is happening physiologically with a child. So one point I want to make here is that in a lot of therapeutic settings, we talk about managing emotions as if it is a concept, right? So we talk about, okay, like we get really angry, we get really anxious about something. And, if we just use our coping skills, if we just think a little differently about it, we can better manage how we feel and our reactions. And then, and maybe some of you have a child who this is the pattern where when they're calm, they know their coping skills, they know their calming skills, they know why they got upset about something, but then put them in the moment when they are upset and they cannot access any of that information. They cannot utilize their calming and coping skills, which makes complete sense, right? Because when we are incredibly angry, anxious, we get into that fight or flight mode and our brain is working differently. We cannot think clearly. We cannot access our calming strategies, right? Like we are more in like reactive survival mode, which is why we see kids having the outburst, having the meltdown, having a really hard time being in control and feeling in control when they're that upset about something. This is additionally difficult for kids who have a diagnosis that makes emotional regulation more challenging, right? So kids with autism, kids with ADHD, kids who have experienced a traumatic event that makes, their body react and go into that survival mode more easily. Now, if we talk about calming down and using coping skills in therapy and expect a child to go out into the real world and be able to utilize that, pull that information back out and use it, it is the same idea as talking about a bike and thinking about a bike and expecting a child to be able to ride a bike. We cannot just develop balance, develop reaction times by talking about bikes, right? We have to practice the skill. And so this same concept about how we learn to ride a bike applies to emotional regulation. We physically have to get on the bike, right? We physically have to practice managing our emotions, bringing our heart rate down in those moments when we are slightly elevated in order to develop stronger and more automatic emotional regulation abilities. And this is exactly what Mightier is doing as kids play. So kids wear a heart rate monitor on their arm, and that heart rate monitor is connecting basically their body, their physiological response to the game. So what you see on the left-hand side of my screen is an image of one of our games, where a child can always see what's happening internally for them, right? They can see when they're calm and in the blue zone and when their heart rate is up and they're in their red zone. When they get into the red zone, things get a little more difficult in the game. Not in a way that's like frustrating or too difficult, right? It's actually in a way that the child's like, okay, if I want to get back to my gameplay, I gotta get my heart rate down. So they are motivated to bring their heart rate down. They can pause the game and practice different calming strategies in order to bring their heart rate down, or they could keep playing and bring their heart rate down at the same time. Either way is fine. We really want kids to experiment and figure out what works best for them. And then when they get back to their blue zone, they are earning rewards for that. So there's a whole economy system built into the game. So there is motivation baked in there to bring your heart rate back down, get back to that state of calm, get back to that state of emotional regulation. And you're practicing this. So this is the practice that happens constantly as kids are playing. And there's a number of different games that kids can play within Mightier. There are 25 different games on there. So there's a game that's more appropriate for a younger child who's maybe newer to video games and needs things to be a little slower, versus a child who has more video game experience and has quick reaction times and is very familiar with how to play games, right? There's like a wide variety. Strategy games, puzzle games, quick reaction games, a whole big variety of games on there, as well as like a meta game, a universe, a mightier world where you are exploring, you're going on quests and you're solving mysteries and you're like leveling up characters or like growing these characters in a way. So there's a lot of fun stuff going on in there to make sure that kids are having a good time and want to come back and want to play. So we have really good engagement rates as well from kids. And then we have a program that's wrapped around the kid experience that is really designed for families and caregivers. So we have a parent app where there's a bunch of different educational pieces on there. You can follow along with your child's gameplay stats. What are they doing? How many times have they brought their heart rate down? Things like that. We often do webinars for caregivers, so educational opportunities to really deep dive into something, anger, anxiety, whatever it is. Family activities to explore emotions. We call these our skill packs. Depending on how you sign up for Mightier, you would either get these digitally or in the mail, but these are really fun. The one I'm holding up is on perspective taking, and it is the idea that, let's turn perspective taking into a game. Like, let's play with it. So in here, there's a number of different games that you would play with your child. It's really fun. It's meant to be like an after dinner activity, maybe something you do before bed, but bringing you into the learning with your child and practicing a skill through play. And then we have a community as well, a caregiver community that you are able to join. Who does Mightier support? Who is it for? So at the core of it, if a child is struggling with emotional regulation, or really any of us, because we all feel angry, anxious, overwhelmed, stressed at times, like we can all benefit from stronger emotional regulation skills. But like I mentioned, there are some kids who have additional difficulty with that, right? So whether that is a child with anxiety, a child diagnosed with autism, ADHD, a child who ODD as well. But across the board, when we really break down looking at specific symptoms or specific diagnoses, we see really great improvement. So we see kids anxiety improving, so like worry, low self-esteem, that tendency to withdraw, we see improvement there. Around anger, we see improved frustration tolerance, a decrease in aggressive behaviors, if that it has been something that happens for a child. For kids specifically diagnosed with autism, we have looked at we ran a small study where basically all the children in the study were receiving ABA and we gave Mightier to half the group as well, and saw that the children in the Mightier group made or reported 81% reported clinical improvement after 3 months of play versus only 50% in the ABA alone group reporting clinical improvement. For kids in that study who aggressive behaviors was something that was being monitored, we saw twice the reduction in aggressive behaviors for kids in the Mightier group. And then for kids with ADHD, we do also see some improvement in impulsivity and hyperactivity as well. And then we see a trickle down or trickle out impact for caregivers as well. So less conflict at home, less stress. We ran a study a couple years back where caregivers were also reflecting on their work performance, as well as their overall sense of well-being, happiness, and saw that correlation on both sides, right? So when kids were struggling, parents were struggling. Parents saying like that they felt that their child's mental health was impacting their own sense of well-being, engagement in relationships, how they were performing at work, whether or not they were could show up to work, right? Like if they were having to miss days of work. And then when kids played Mightier for 3 months, all of those same pieces improved for the parents, which is really, it makes sense that when your child is doing better, you are also doing better. Who is Mightier for? I already went over this, but in general, any child who's struggling with emotional regulation. If your child is younger, on that younger side, I would say in that 4 to 6-year-old range, they are probably going to need a little extra parent support to play Mightier, just around navigating the system. There are a few things to read. What buttons do I push? How do I play this game? They're just going to need someone with them, and that's fine. But usually younger kids actually do really, really well around like the deep breathing and when to bring their heart rate down. I have my 5-year-olds play this I have 5-year-old twins, and I have them play this now and again. And like it's very cute to see a 5-year-old bringing their heart rate down and doing deep breathing. The only thing I will mention as well here is that the heart rate monitor, so if a child does have some sensory sensitivities, the heart rate monitor may or may not be an issue. It may or may not be uncomfortable for them. That is something to try out and see. With Mightier, we do have a trial period, so you could always test that out and see, like, is this working for us or not? And actually, I am surprised knowing that it is something that like a child has to wear and could have some sensory impact. It actually doesn't come up as often as like an issue, as often as you might expect. We have done some work to really make sure that band on the heart rate monitor is comfortable, is soft. Oh, and that is it. I'm going to show you actually. Let me switch how I'm sharing my screen. Because I have for Autism Society of Southern Arizona Families, there's a flyer that Kate has access to that she can share out. But on this, you will also see that there is a 20% off code for your group, and it's down here on the float. That's not highlighting, but down here is the promo code that you would enter at checkout if you are interested in Mightier, this PT-ASA code. So that is available to you. I'll leave it up there on the screen for a second, but Kate, again, also has access to this, and she will email this out and make it available. All right. Thank you so much. And you are welcome to reach out to our family care team with any questions about Mightier. That is just support@mightier.com. You're also welcome to email me, Jessie@mightier.com. Jessie is JESSIE @mightier.com. Or you are able to reach me through Kate as well. All right. Thanks so much.